The topic of conversation today is discovery and qualification. And so let's go ahead and get started. So, what are qualifying questions, right? What are the initial questions? And one of the things that we always think about in terms of setting appointments is really to see if you can write things down, write everything down, right? Take extensive notes. One of the best practices that I've used throughout my career when I was in inside sales, field sales, and then really look to communicate an exchange of value, right? Look to get the prospect on the other side to really agree to the next step only and get them to commit to an exchange of value. You really want to make sure that all of us understand there's no such thing as a magic script, right? There's no such thing as a it only works if we talk to enough of the right people, and but you've got to really own what you're saying and keep adapting, rewording, rewriting, make it your own. And a script is just a high level of preparation in terms of making sure that the prospect is thinking of this as an investment, right, versus a low-level sales environment, and you want to relate to them at the appropriate business level. So, what you want to do is make. Hi, hello. Yeah. So please, yeah, put yourselves on mute, please, if so we can get a clean recording here. And please type in your questions in the chat window at any time. But what you want to really think about is three aspects, right? And all of you have been doing this for a long time. Many of you know this job inside and out. So this is definitely preaching to the choir here. But three areas, broad areas, always good to reiterate. One is company, which is who are they, right? One of the key points that you want to emphasize throughout is making sure it's about them and not us, right? So the more you questions or the more you words that you use versus we and I words, because they're investing time to get something of value in return, right? So examples of those things that you want to talk about are really who are they, what verticals do they serve, right? Do they have any separate brands, subsidiaries? In many cases, you have, for example, Yum Foods has Taco Bell as a subsidiary, as a brand. And where are they located? How many employees do they have? And some of this, you may already have researched and gotten it from discover.org or Google search or other tools that you're using. It's always good to confirm that. And then, in terms of the contact, make sure that you understand who the person is, what their title and role is, and are they responsible for deciding what technology vendors they need, right? What is their role as it relates to the actual investment? And in the ATS world, in the job world, one of the questions we ask is how many recruiters they have, right? But in the role point world, the Canvas world, those questions may be a little bit different, and in the telemetry world. Now, one of the questions we bring up in terms of need in the job wide context would be around what are you using right now for ATS? Is it working or not working? Very high level, right? And that could be the same thing for role point, internal mobility, for example, for Canvas, text for being able to reach out to hundreds and thousands of candidates instead of dozens of candidates, and then really understanding what the main business driver is. Is there a compelling event, right? What you call a compelling event might be, for example, a new talent acquisition leader came on board and they want to look at a new system, for example, or they're growing massively. And if you look at their career site, you're seeing that they have lots of postings and it's a very old, outdated career site. So there's an opportunity to talk to them about what is the business driver. Are they growing? Are they expanding internationally? Are they hiring lots of recruiters, right? Are they adding? Are they having a huge, attrition issue with existing high potential employees that they have in their organization? are they struggling with identifying talent pools and have been able to market to those talent pools? And then, what do they really want to see or learn more and see a demo? What challenges are they experiencing as it relates to text as a platform for their recruiters, internal mobility or referral technology technology as a platform, right? Or ATS in the case of JobBite, and in the case of telemetry, more in terms of the CRM component, right? So, do you have any needs that you're trying to solve specifically in the next 60 to 90 days? What challenges are you experiencing? So I'll pause there and open it up to you guys. So, any questions or any comments about this sort of high level targeting? Are we on the right track here in terms of making sure that we're at least hitting these pieces, right? And these are key questions that we need answered during the high level qualification. Do you guys agree? Not agree? Do you think there's a better way? Love to hear from you. So please type into the chat window. And by the way, I forgot to mention the best comment, question, feedback that you give. I save the chat record and is going to win an Amazon gift card. So that's why we want to make sure that we make it interactive. So any comments on where we are so far with this? So I'll pause there, let you guys sort of take it in. Are these the right categories? Are there any additional categories that we're missing at a very high level when you're qualifying with the customer or prospect in this case? All right, so looks like you guys are good. So let's move forward. So basically then, one of the key points is make it super conversational, right? You've got to figure out what would be really easy, right? As you can't make it a series of questions, obviously, right? What's your title? What are you responsible for? Are you responsible for technology investments? I mean, that really sounds like you're grilling them, right? So one of the ways that I've always talked about is said that, I really love talking to our clients about their business and understanding their business processes around talent acquisition. Or I'll say something like, just to make sure I'm tying our conversation to what you're working on. How do what is the process for, or how do you do X, Y, Z, right? And one of the key things is to make sure that you have the right elevator pitch already prepared, right? You have your elevator components, your elevator pitch components already laid out, and so you really have a good conversation that you can have. So these are some ways, so I can make sure that I'm only giving you information that's valuable to you. Let me ask you, X, Y, Z, right? So these are some what Eric points out. What is the reason you took this call? Is a great way to uncover a lot of that information, right? Which is actually, kind of a little bit putting them on the spot to some degree, but it's a good question, right? It's like, hey, thank you for taking the call. May I ask, what's the and I'm excited to have a conversation. I'm curious, what's the reason you took our call? I'm sure you get calls from vendors all day, right? Or technology providers. So great question, Eric. So and make sure that you're avoiding, weak words like maybe, right? Engineer your conversation so you're eliciting information, right? It's not just yes or no. Yes or no questions could be good, but you want to make sure that you're asking some different levels of questions. And we'll talk more about that later in the call. And make sure that you have in your hand, right, data that really validates your credibility and weave it into, almost every sentence. So if there's an industry statistic that really helps you make your case for text, for internal mobility, and it comes from a third party, even better, right? If you have Forrester or IDC or Gartner quotes, those are quotes from experts, analysts, quotes from studies that may have been conducted, any stories from companies that you have actually worked with before. And one of the things that most people, while they're qualifying and discovering, forget is that the person that they're talking to have a conversation around internal mobility or around ATS or around text or CRM, maybe a few times a year. But all of us, just given the sheer number of calls that we're making, the number of emails that we're sending out, we're actually having hundreds of calls every month, right? So we're literally, over time, there are many, many, many stories that you actually have in your arsenal, so to speak, about companies that you've actually either spoken to before, personas such as people very similar to their role that you've spoken to before, and make sure that you communicate that. So gaining trust is all about adding value and making sure there's an exchange of value. So statements of any previous clients, right? So and so says. In the Java world, we talk about Trek bikes, or we talk about Ingram Micro, right? In the role-point world, for internal mobility, we can talk about Santander, right, or Panasonic, etc. So reference statements, regulatory. In the case of Canvas, lots and lots of examples, great examples. MedPro Health Staffing, for example. So again, the point is making it conversational. Now, we differentiate between qualification and discovery. Qualification is higher level. It's those three categories of basically company, contact, or, for example, need, right? So let's actually go to you guys, and I'll ask Julia. Julia, are you on the call? If you're on the call, unmute yourself, please. Love to understand an example of a need question that you might ask a customer. Julia, if you're available. So what would be an example in the job world of a need question that you would ask a JobVite customer? Julia Bear, are you here? I think she's muted. All right, let's go to Luke. Luke, if you're on the call, unmute yourself, please. What is the example of a need customer that you would ask a Canvas prospect? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. So let's take an example from this, right? In the high-level qualification criteria before we go to deeper discovery. What is the example of a need question that you would ask? If I were to ask you, put you on the spot and say, hey, how would you phrase a question to a customer around
Yeah,
need for Canvas?
I would say what's working well right now when you're texting with your candidates.
Let's just role play for a couple of minutes, right? So I say, oh, everything's great. We love our texts. Our recruiters use text all the time. They text their customers. They
I
text
would
their
ask,
candidates. Yeah.
what kind of functions are you using to text with your candidates? Is that one-to-one, one-to-many? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, we send texts out to, we have our recruiters texting with our candidates, making sure they show up on time to the interviews, asking them questions about, do they have the right appropriate qualifications?
Yeah, how are you doing that right now?
Through their phones, their text,
Okay.
text on their
Yeah,
phones. Yeah.
I love hearing that because I just know I see the value behind texting and to use your cell phones. Have you ever looked into a texting platform to help with some automation of that, as well as getting your employees off their cell phones?
So how would that work? Automation, as in, would they be able to
Yeah,
use something else other than their phones to do this?
yeah, I love the curiosity, and that's why I'd love to get you on a call. I know I caught you out of the blue today. I was just going to see what your calendar's looking like.
Okay, so yeah, so we can stop the role play, but you see the point, right? It's like, the block and tackle of making sure that you're figuring out if there's a real need, right? The person was just saying, oh yeah, our recruiters use text, but clearly they're not leveraging automation or bots, or right, they haven't been exposed to that whole area. They seem to not know much about that area of the solutions. Okay, great. So let's move forward here. So Dave, how are you trying to? Dave Hick, if you're on the call, why don't you unmute and let's chat a little bit.
Sure.
So, Dave, how would you go about this high level qualification, right? If you were calling what are some questions that you would ask at a high level?
In the telemetry world, it would really depend on who's on the other end of the line. We do a significant amount of research about personas and contacts before we ever get on a call with them.
Sure.
So it would really depend on a number of factors around the persona. But really what we're trying to get at is, you know, in our experience, we've found that most of the enterprise organizations we're dealing with have taken some steps towards solving their issues. So we really like to dig into what's working and what's not. Sort of second generation solution type questions, right? So we do a lot of stroking, I guess, right? Hey, you've obviously made some investment there. You've obviously tried some things. And so we try to personalize that to the person we're talking to and say, hey, you know, what's working there and what's frustrating you? Not what's frustrating your organization, what's frustrating you.
Personally,
right?
Yeah.
So we try to make it about the person, even though it's a B2B conversation.
Sure.
So that's at a high level, that would be our approach.
And what would be an example of when you say, let's say they have a solution in place, right? They're using, they have an HCM in place like Workday or Taleo, and they're really they're using some of the components. You know, what are some things that you would do to counter them? Let's say they're using a new era sort of AI type of solution. How would you counter that?
Yeah, on the AI side, we would talk about what kind of impact that is having on their day to day, right? So if I'll use an example like Workday. Workday is kind of low hanging fruit for the enterprise market because, you know, there's a pretty common theme out there that talent acquisition folks are throwing their hands up around Workday and weren't involved in the decision to bring it in. So we'll talk about sort of the benefits of Workday, right? We'll say, hey, look, you know, they've got this CRM Lite that I see you guys using in your talent network. And again, we spend a lot of time auditing the candidate experience to see what's in play there. And then we'll just sort of put conceptual ideas in front of them. So, you know, if you were going to, type question, run a campaign at scale to all of your silver medalist nurse candidates,
right? Exactly.
From last month's hiring day, how would you do that exactly? Walk me through it. Sort of curiosity, right? That's how we try to keep it genuine. Whereas, you know, I'm really curious. You know, how would you be able to do that exactly? And typically, because we're laying landmines there, we know that they're not able to run those campaigns at scale. We are kind of leading them towards a frustration or a pain point that we know they already have. So that's the goal. We're working on what we know about industry, what we see in audit, and trying to move them towards the pain points that we know are in play.
Right. And there are three key things that Dave brought up, right? One is folks on the call. One of the key points that he brought up was the research before the call, obviously, for the particular persona that you're talking to, and knowing a little bit about. So that's one piece. The second piece that he brought up is making sure that you know, one of the key errors that we all make sometimes is we get so excited about our own solution, and we're confident that we can make a significant impact on somebody's business, that we sometimes might put down their existing solution, right? And remember that the person that you're talking to might have been part of that decision to buy that platform earlier, let's say 2-3 years ago, whatever the time frame was. So that's number one. So making sure that you, like, you know, Dave used the term stroking them a little bit, and that's fair, because what you want to make sure is to not only have the knowledge to be able to say, well, Workday's interesting. Workday's got some definitely got some CRM like types of things. You might even come out and say that, right? And then you get into, but walk me through your process of how you would run a campaign at scale, let's say with your silver medalists. So that third piece, right? The first piece is knowing who they are, what their background is, and targeting the conversation of that persona. But the second piece is knowing enough about the competition so you can ask a landmine question that can actually make them, secondly, acknowledging that the competitor has some advantages and some key capabilities, right? It's nothing wrong with that. So that conveys actually your knowledge about the industry, about your competition, about the market, so they see you as somebody who's adding value. And then thirdly, asking a question that allows them to basically a leading question that leads them to your solution, right? Rather than telling them, hey, we're much better than XYZ, we're able to do XYZ, right? So that's I just wanted to point some of those pieces out. So let's move forward. So one of the we wanted to get into the discovery questions, which is sort of the deeper three levels of questions, right? And some of you may have seen this. This is a classic sort of Sandler approach, right? And there are many approaches in the marketplace, right? There's more challenger types of approaches where you come in with specific commercial insights, right? And what challenger would define as a commercial insight is basically packaging something about their business that they don't know is about to cause them a great deal of pain, right? So it comes back to pain ultimately. Or tell them something of value that they didn't know already about a problem or challenge that they don't see coming yet, right? Ideally, that's the content in a commercial insight. You're telling them something about the market, which could be an industry statistic, about a product, which could be a solution to one of the major challenges or pain that they're going to experience. But again, methodologies aside, right? We want to make sure that we go deep, and these are questions that you can leverage, that your AEs can leverage throughout the cycle. So the whole idea of this is based on behavioral economics, right? The idea is essentially people will essentially do twice or three times as much work to avoid pain as they will to gain the same amount of pleasure. So in other words, the classic example is if you say, hey, I'd like to bet you $1,000, right, that you're going to get this particular coin toss wrong, and if you do, you owe me $1,000. On the other hand, if if you are right, you gain $1,000. So most people, right, depending on their income level, etc. But the research shows that most people will avoid taking that bet. Okay, it's a 50-50 chance of making the same amount of money and losing the same amount of money, right? On the other hand, if I told you, I'll bet, we'll do it this way. On the flip of a coin, you can either lose $1,000, or if you get it right, I'll give you $3,000. Right? So how does that feel as an opportunity to you? Does that feel different? So just type into the chat window or speak up, unmute yourself and speak up. But there's a difference between those two opportunities. Wouldn't you agree? Win or lose the same amount, and then win 3 times as much as you might lose. The research again shows that most people would be willing to take the second. Many people would actually take the second bet. A lot of people, exactly. So Luke, might as well, right? So if you get, it's like the lottery, right? I'm willing to invest $1 if I can make 100 million, right? Because there's a risk reward scenario and it all comes back to neuroscience and how the brain processes this information, right? I had an old manager at Oracle. I was actually at Oracle way back in the 90s, and we were doing $100,000 deals over the phone in those days, selling just the database. It's unbelievable to think about these days. But the point is that there's essentially a risk appetite that we all have. And at some point, as Dave is pointing out, at some point the balance tips over to where you're willing to take the risk, and you start to really want the reward much more than the risk scares you, right? So the point is that there are 3 levels of pain in this context that we're talking about when we're discovering and going deeper. First level of pain, most people, and most of us do a great job of this, which is, hey, tell me how you do XYZ today. Or, what have you, what is the platform you're using for XYZ? Or how long have you had this problem? These are data level questions, right? These are good questions. They could be even technical questions, right? but it's based on this principle essentially that you're trying to get some history from them, right? You're trying to put them at a baseline in terms of what they have historically, technically, etc. A lot of us, can even get to the second level, and you find that this is really hard, sometimes hard to do because you may not know the KPIs, right? The business level. But what is the quantified impact on the business? What has been the impact so far of what you've been doing? And most people may not have even done the measurement, right? They vaguely feel a pain, let's say, but it's not gotten to the level where people are frustrated and overwhelmed and literally like having sleepless nights, right? So it hasn't killed them yet. And the funny part is human beings will put up with that low level chronic pain for long periods of time. It's really interesting, right? Until it gets acute, right? Until you say, oh my God, I can't walk anymore. I had ankle surgery at one point, and I was wearing a boot before that allowed me to walk without the pain. And then before that, I had injured it in a motorcycle accident. It kind of healed somewhat, but it was a little painful. But I was willing to put up with the chronic pain for almost like 6 to 8 months before it got to a point where I couldn't walk anymore, right? So one of the key things is, yeah, Dave, let's have you jump in here and share about the quantification piece. You had a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interject,
No, no,
Sundar.
go
This
for
is
it.
great, by the way. Yeah, no, just our experience, what we've seen, and I think that most of the other team would probably agree with this too, is the not being able to quantify what the issue is or how the issues are impacting the wider business is one of the main pain points that especially talent acquisition folks have in large enterprise organizations, right? You can bring that down to a leadership level person that doesn't have the data to have a seat at the strategic table.
Yeah.
Is a main pain point that we see, and that filters all the way down to a line level talent acquisition sourcer that's not able to show the impact that they're having for their day to day.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a great area to drill down into.
Well, part of the challenge is that it's an uncomfortable question, right, for them to address because they might not have the data. They might have never done the research to figure it out. And the point is, unless we're able to do that, how do we quantify, even for these days, even for like a $20,000, $30,000 decision, right? People need to quantify the impact. It's gotten to where business is very, very competitive, and the margins in some industries are razor thin, like manufacturing, right? That we target, for example, the job white world. So actually making engaging with us a function where they have to think at a higher level, even though it's a little uncomfortable, will actually cause them to associate more value with you. It's a surprising thing, right? When we challenge people a little bit, get them to come out of their comfort zone and think at a slightly higher level than they've been used to thinking, they see that as value. Think about just in your own lives, right? The people that are like, we all have those friends that are like acquaintances, let's say, right? It's like, they're like, oh yeah, hey, great, nice to see you. There's never any, they're not challenging you in any way, right? It's always a nice and happy feeling and so on. And then we all have those friends, right, that speak up when you're like about to make a mistake, right? And they actually get in, kind of get in your face and say, hey, you shouldn't be, think about this before you do this. Over time, we associate a lot more value with the second friendship. That's how I feel anyway. I'd rather know that I'm going to, and have a point of view that challenges me in my life. And so it's really key that we are able to do that and challenge them. And we have to coach them on this a little bit. And for that, we have to actually know the customer stories about the impact that we have already had on the customers. JobVite, has about 1,500 customers, right? So telemetry has hundreds of customers. RollPoint has, dozens and dozens of customers, right? So my point is, we have these data points somewhere, somehow in your organization. Your CSM has it, your renewals person has it, your SC might have it. We need to go dig some of this stuff up. Your marketing department ideally has been giving you this, but it's not always easy to acquire, right? Because they themselves, the talent acquisition people, might not know. And then the third level question, which is a question that Dave, you brought up earlier, which was, how important is this to you to you personally? and actually go through, and Dave raised this point before, right? Why is it so important? And actually asking them that question. What is the reason for you taking my call today is on the same level as this, right? Which is, what's the urgency? So I hope that you understand that it's really, really important to understand the amount, the acuteness of the pain, and then try to be able to quantify it. Because otherwise, we become just another vendor who's giving them a set of features, right? The benefits of those features, and trying to convince them that they need to make a decision, right? We haven't um, really gotten into the first step, really, which is convincing them to some degree that uh, you know where they are is no longer tenable, right? Where they are is no longer acceptable. You got to make people feel uncomfortable where they are first before they'll make the change. So I call it 3 stages. I call it why change, right? Why change to our solution, and why now? Many of you might have heard this, right? Why you now, for example. But the point is, why change should come before why you, and then why you now. And a lot of us sometimes skip over that step. The same thing applies to, by the way, the point that I was trying to make is, again, people will do 2 or 3 times as much to avoid the pain piece than to actually gain the pleasure or the business benefit. And so, how long have you been trying to? What's your vision for the organization in this area? Right? Asking them that question really causes them to say, "Oh boy, I better have a vision." Right? First of all. Secondly, try to put that into words and get them to commit and write that down. And you can use that in later when you put that into Salesforce as this is the vision that they've told us. Your AE can go back in and be able to say, well, when we first started having a conversation, you told us that your vision is XYZ, right? And then they can use this as an approach where we can really say, hey, you've told us that this is your vision. Am I completely have I communicated with you? Am I not understanding you clearly? Because if they say, well, we really, have decided to put this on hold, when you have this question, this answer to this early question that you guys are actually asking, then the AE can literally leverage that throughout the sales cycle. The second level gain question is, let's assume, let's go out 6 months. Let's assume that we've actually made a decision and we've actually implemented internal mobility, or we've actually implemented silver medalist campaign at scale using telemetry, right? What does that look like? What is the benefit? And if you were to quantify it, what would that look like? And create, you're really causing them to create a picture in their minds. And human beings, when they create that picture, that image, right, of the future vision that they themselves want to achieve, they associate it with you, as in, why you and why you now. That's when we're able to really have an impact and stick with. We're all in a loyalty loop now, right? It's not a one-time sale. We're not selling products anymore. We're selling a service, and we're selling long-term loyalty to a SaaS service. So very, very important. And then the third thing is, how important is accomplishing this vision to you? So I hope I haven't beaten a dead horse with this, but the point I want to make is that this is really, really important, and really selling the trust, right? One question Dave is asking is open-ended questions for second and third level. What are some examples? Yeah, great questions, and great segue into really the next piece, which is what is a level 1, and then I'll give you examples as well, right? And we're actually going to do a quick exercise here where I'm going to have you guys think about level 1, level 2, level 3 questions. In a few minutes, we're actually going to start writing down some of these questions for your solution that you're qualifying and discovering for. Okay, does that sound fair? All right. So level 1 is essentially what you're doing with the level 1 question is really framing the need, right? How do you do this today? What's the technology platform you have today to accomplish these things? What is your current process for doing X, Y, Z? What you're really doing is framing, right? The overall, you're trying to uncover and frame. Level 2 question is, this is what actually drives some commitment. Because once they associate business impact and value, right, by quantifying it, that's when, with both pain and gain, that's when they're actually going to try to start taking some steps toward it, right? Because that's when they're creating the vision in their own minds, and they're trying to quantify. Now they have to go out and get some data from different places to actually justify the budget request. You might be coaching them through an early stage budget request. So it's our job to really understand the impact that it's having. It's not that, we push them to get the data, but it is our job to understand, if they didn't do this, what would happen? And if they did this, what would happen in terms of impact, right? And there's clarity, because if somebody tells you, oh, this, I don't know, I mean, texting is not really relevant for us, but I mean, running those silver medalist campaigns at scale, boy, that's a big one. Or, we have to solve the problem of basic ATS before we even go down the path of these wonderful new things that you guys have, right? We need an applicant tracking system. We've been using Excel, right? So there might be different levels of impact that the different solutions that we all offer, whether it's all of us, right? Texting, internal mobility, the campaigning at scale with using a CRM, a single source of truth, or an ATS. So the third level of question, again, most people don't get to this, which is why now? This is the urgency. And this is really having a key understanding of their KPIs, right? Their specific key performance indicators, right? What do they get measured on? It's a little bit uncomfortable to ask somebody, hey, what do you get measured on, right? But it's so important to get here, because if you're able to align, our solution with what their specific personal goals are, and sometimes they literally will write this down in their LinkedIn profile, right? You look at their LinkedIn profile and they actually define what exactly they do, and their buying vision is right in there, and their KPIs are right in there. They'll actually tell you. And in many conversations that you all have had, whether it's with talent acquisition leaders, CHROs, with recruiters, with managers, you know what these are already, but you're getting it from them. You're getting them to tell you, and by associating with this. So you might be able to take a level 1 issue, which is, we're using each of the examples we had before with Luke, which was each of our recruiters is using their own personal text on their devices to communicate one-on-one with candidates, right? Now, if they're able to say, well, my CFO won't allow me, or in my business division, my CFO won't allow me to recruit, to hire 10 more recruiters, even though we're supposed to fill 1,000 jobs in the next quarter, right? It's a happy problem to have, but I just can't scale, right? So a level 1 question, which is how many recruiters do you have, now can become a level 3 question, which is, right, how do I scale to actually meet that need? So here are some examples, folks. This is what I wanted to, one of the things I wanted to share with you all, which is, what are the types of specific discovery questions? And by the way, we're building a playbook. It's in progress. We're validating it with we've done the job right, including text, so Canvas piece with the managers, and then we're actually validating it as we speak. And we're going to extend it to, obviously, to role point and telemetry. But the first level of questions would be something like, how often have you had, or have you ever had, or do you have clients that have, or how do your people or teams manage to support solutions in this area, or how much time, right? What is your solution for? Those are the types of questions, right? And then again, the second level of questions is, what would the impact be if you could save X amount of time? Or how would this feature or function be beneficial, specifically, quantifiably, right? And then the third level is the personal. What initiatives? So I'm going to leave this slide up, And what I want you guys to do is take out your, if you have your laptops in front of you, fine, use that. If it's your notebooks that you like writing in, but I'm going to have you guys write down a couple of questions for each example. Okay, and then so I'll give you guys 2-3 minutes. Write down a couple of questions for each example. Then we'll go around the table here and actually have you share your questions. So write down one technical question, one or two technical questions, one or two business impact questions for your solution and your buyer. So I have a specific buyer persona and your specific solution. If you want to make it a specific industry, go for it. But even better, right? Very specific. And then I want two questions each: two technical data historic questions, two business impact questions, and two personal importance questions. All right, go for it. And we'll give you guys, it's 8:42 Pacific. We'll give you guys about 5 minutes. We'll go to 8:48 Pacific. Let's write this down. I'm going to go around the table. I'll be calling on you guys individually. So I don't know who caller number 2 might be, but we have most people's names in here. So does that sound good? All right. Let's let me know if you have any questions about this. So two technical questions, level 1 questions, two business impact questions, level 2 questions, two personal importance questions, level 3 questions. All right, most of you must have had your questions written down by now. A couple questions in the level 1, a couple questions level 2, a couple questions level 3. Do you need couple more minutes, or are you good? Can we go forward? Please type into the chat window. Let me know if you're ready. All right. Looks like Max is ready to go. All right. Some of you might be still writing down those questions. Let's go to Max. So Max, if you want to unmute yourself, let's.
Yeah,
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good, good. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Max.
All right. Yeah. So level one, usually in my qualification discovery calls, I'll ask like, how do you manage your current referral process?
Yeah.
And that'll like uncover, whether they're using like Excel spreadsheets or their ATS, and kind of that'll allow me to like illustrate their like major pain points that we see in our current clients. Then I'll usually go into how much time do you or like your managing team spend overseeing, managing the employer referral program. And like usually it's too long. And like that's a huge pain point that we can alleviate by automating the entire employer referral process. And then, level two, how would like automating the employer referral program benefit you or your team? And then another level two question that I would probably ask here is what is like how would like marketing capabilities or improving the marketing capabilities around your employer referral program bolster your employer brand?
Yeah.
And then level three is where does revamping your employer referral program land on your initiatives for like this quarter, this year?
Yeah.
Good. And then also just like what piqued your interest taking this call with me today?
Sure. Good. All right. Let's go to Sarah. Sarah, are you on the call? Sarah, can you hear me? I think you are unmuted, so I should be able to hear you. For some reason, we can't hear you. Is it possibly your microphone? Might be in the GoToMeeting audio. You might need to set it to. There's an audio tab in the GoToMeeting. Sometimes it behaves weirdly. But while you're figuring that out, Sarah, let's go to Maddie. Maddie, can you unmute yourself? We can get some level 1, level 2, level 3 questions.
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. What would be a level 1 question?
So I wrote a couple. So I said, what systems are you currently using to recruit?
Okay.
And then another one was, how are you currently engaging with your customers?
Sure.
And then for level 2, I wasn't able to think of any for level 2 yet, but my level 3 was kind of what is your goal by the end of the year? Like, what are you looking to achieve, really? So,
what are you looking to achieve in what area?
I guess, what are you what is your goal by the end of the year? What are you
for what product or for what solution or for what pain?
Like ATS.
There we go. So that's a good, yeah. What are your initiatives around ATS this year, right? What are your goals around ATS this year? What would you like to accomplish in the next 6 months? Level 2 question would be, in terms of today, what impact is your current offer process, right? Offer is one step in the ATS, right? Or interview scheduling process, right? What impact? How do you do that today? What impact is that having? How much time do you spend on that, right? What is it costing you to not be able to attract candidates using Engage, let's say, or using in the future it might be telemetry. But you see what I'm saying? It's basically trying to get them to give you a number or an amount associated with a pain that leads back to our product. So it's almost a leading question in some ways, but great.
That was helpful. Thank you so much.
Sure. Riley, you want to take a crack? Unmute yourself, please. Yeah,
definitely. Thanks, Sundar.
Sure.
Let's see. So for the level 1 questions here, I had, how do your employees keep track of where people they refer are in the process?
Yeah.
And then another one is, how often do employees come to your team with questions about people they've referred in?
Right. Got it.
For the level 2
How
business
often?
impact ones.
Okay, good. Yeah. Keep
Oh,
going.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said how often do employees come to your team with questions?
Nice.
For the level 2 ones, business impact, I said, how would a tool that automatically manages referrals affect your team?
Okay.
And then I had, what impact does the current referral process have on the talent acquisition team?
Good. And if you say what impact, they say, well, what do you mean? What do you mean by impact? And then you might use the different. Ultimately, listen, we're all interested in either saving time, right, saving money, or having a superior experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Think about it. It's everything we buy, everything we invest in, is either saving us time, saving us, or trying to make us money, or we have a fantastic experience using that product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, let's take something that a lot of people do that they probably might not want to do in the future, which is smoking, right? It falls into the third category, right? They have a superior experience, right? It doesn't save them money or make them money. I'm giving you an example of the 7 deadly sins, so to speak, right? But but it gives them a superior experience. That's why they buy that. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily saving them time. They may actually need extra time to go out and take smoke breaks. So what I'm trying to say is when we buy, let's say, a car, that's either going to save us time, right? It could be a tool for a salesperson to actually help them make money. They're able to drive their prospects and customers and to lunches and dinners and so on, for example. And then, superior experience than riding on a bus or riding your bicycle, possibly, right? Some of us might prefer to ride our bicycles. So, yeah, good stuff. Dave, do you want to jump in and share a couple of examples on these 3-level questions? What would be some examples? Yeah.
Yeah, I could give you some examples from the telemetry world. So one of them would be, how are you using your CRM today?
Right.
As a top level question. Talk about the process a little bit, and then drilling down, you'd ask things like maybe how much time do you spend doing that? How much time? What are the resources that you're applying against it? So to be first cost, right? And then we drill down third level with, how would you quantify an improvement on that, or what's the metric that needs to improve to call this project a success, right? Or even sort of the more challenging one, which is, right, how would you resolve this if you don't make a change, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a key question, because sometimes it's if this were to continue, what would that mean to your organization, right? If this current process, which is causing you to take additional time, one of the examples I like to give is with, for example, with recruiters, right? If they could spend X number of hours a week on scheduling, right, or putting together the data from reporting or email coordination, literally that's more time with their family, right, for them.
Exactly.
And that's as MasterCard says, right? It's can be measured, right? So the value.
One thing.
Yeah.
Sorry to interject, Sundar, and I'll jump back on mute again. I can't help myself.
No, go for it. No, it's good.
The one thing that we're hyper aware of, and I'm sure that everybody else on this team is aware of as well, is that we're living in the B2B buying culture of the WebMD age, right? 80% of their decision making, of their positioning of us, of our solutions, even of their own challenges, happens long before they ever engage with any vendor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So really recognizing that that's the case, and challenging that early in the discovery tends to lead to a pretty productive conversation. So things like a question like at the first level might be, why do you need to improve your candidate experience?
Yeah.
What have you self-diagnosed? Get into the heart of what organizationally they've landed on. And then, how are you trying to do that today, and what does success look like as you drill down to second and third level questions? But understanding that they've already got us positioned, that they've already got, and my air quotes are up in the air, an understanding of what they're here to shop for, is really important when you're thinking about those initial questions that you're asking.
That's really, really, really critical. So remember, folks, that talent acquisition people belong, they go to SHRM, they go to other conferences. They talk to their peers in their own industry. They go on the web. They do the research, right? They talk to Trust Radius. They get their data from various sources, right? And so let's say whatever percentage it is, right? It could be 50%, 60, 80% of the buying cycle. It could be already completed by the time they get to you, right? And they know probably more in some ways about your competition, your markets. So the questions that we have to ask have to be more and more intelligent. And that's the point I think Dave is trying to make, which is before we ask a question, understand that these people have been online, talking to their peers, going to conferences, reading blogs, reading magazine articles in their industry, and they might have been in that industry for a while. And so that's really critical. Okay, let's move forward here. Great point, Dave. So in terms of the high level, this is, each of us, each of our organizations might have slightly different approaches in terms of deeper sort of discovery around time frame, budget, competition, decision making. But one of the key things to think about is making sure that you have you're leading to next steps, right? What needs to happen for both sides before the next meeting? What are the next steps for us to move forward, right? Can we set up our next call? What needs to happen for both? You notice Luke did that, right? He was trying to transition to, hey, can we get on a call? I know I caught you at possibly a bad time. I'd love to set up a call to follow up and explain some of these components to you earlier in the conversation around text when I sort of put him on the spot there. But and what will be accomplished in the next meeting? What would be the goals? And actually laying it out. So again, the interesting thing is that the pain and the gain pieces, those three levels of questions can be used. When do we use them? We can use them at various stages. We can ask them during the early calls. You can ask them pre-demo, and then even in post-demo communications, right? Tying the pain back to the value. When we do an executive summary, when the AE does an executive summary and is sharing with the prospects or the team of folks that are evaluating us on the pricing proposal, we also share, you expressed to us that this was your buying, your vision for the organization was XYZ, right? And was a bulletproof, sort of highly secure, highly scalable CRM solution to be able to run scalable campaigns around silver medalists. And that's where you're able to tie the pain that they've expressed back to the value. They said, well, you told us you were spending 25 hours a week doing these things. Each of your recruiters is spending this much time. Or your IT organization takes X number of months to create this environment so you can actually leverage it in the HR side. So remember, level 1, framing the need, level 2, commitment, and level 3 is really urgency. And then what I would like you to do is really prepare your questions, right? So one of the things I always challenge folks to do, and I'll send out an email after this call, but script out your discovery and qualification questions and really role play them. Make sure that that you pick an accountability partner and work with them. So I'll work with your managers on this, and then talk about it one-on-one with your manager. And the purpose of these trainings is obviously to share information, but also for us to take action, right? We've got to continuously change our behavior if we want to get better and better at what we do. And by the way, let me just share with you, people who make the most money in sales are people like, for example, mergers and acquisition sales folks, right? Or stockbrokers, for example, or somebody who does commercial real estate transactions. And guess what's a skill that they all have? It's picking up the phone and asking these different 3 levels of questions. If you stay in sales throughout your career, deep into your career, these are skills that are going to be valuable to you. I promise you, nothing will be wasted here that you're putting effort into. So preparing your questions, role play, practice, and then work with your manager. And I'll send out some things that an email with some details around this, and I'll work with the managers to get that to you. folks, any other questions? Feel free to email me. You can reach me. Let me plug my email ID into the chat window here, and I think I've met many of you. I haven't met the telemetry folks yet, but I want to make sure that we stay in touch. Feel free to send me an email. You can also send me a text, and please send us examples, ideas for more of these trainings, areas that you would like to go deeper into. But I hope you liked it, and I'll follow up with an email to all of you. Stay in touch. Good luck, and happy discovering, happy qualifying. All right, take care, guys. Bye.